All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to another Pro Audio lesson. This is Michael Oskam. Today, we're going to be talking about universal audio. What is the deal with universal audio? If you have been looking into the world of audio, if you're in the world of audio, you undoubtedly have heard about UAD, universal audio products, plugins. Why is everybody talking about it? What's so great about it? And today I'm going to do a quick overview of some of the high points and the reasons that it's so well regarded in the industry, and that it seems to be what everybody, I should say everybody at a very high professional level are using. I switched to Universal Audio, the platform, about 3 years ago, and I say switch to the platform because that is really what it is. It's a full on. You have to jump in with both feet, expecting to get wet and also spend a pretty big amount of money. So, with that regard, it's not for everybody. If you can't afford it, you certainly don't need it to get quality recordings from your home studio. That's been proven time and time again. But there are certain things that I'm going to show you here today that make it really just a joy to work with, especially when you're working with artists. They've streamlined the process so well. So we're talking about recording and then, of course, mixing, and both of those things are done so well. And what I think they did so well is it actually mimics the world of analog in the way that an analog desk would work. And so let's dive into that right away. If you're looking at the screen now here, you see this is what Universal Audio calls their console. And this comes with every piece of hardware. I myself, if you haven't watched the studio tour, you know that I run, you should know that I run a Universal Audio Apollo 8 quad. And I'll explain what the quad means in a second. And then I also have an Apollo Twin Duo. So here's the first thing you need to know about Universal Audio gear. So there are DSP, or digital signal processing chips, inside of their hardware units, okay? And what that does is it allows you to run their plugins, okay, on that DSP, and therefore it doesn't drain any sort of DSP or signal processing power or CPU power from your actual computer. So there's almost no draw from your computer. So that frees your computer up to run your DAW more effectively and efficiently, your virtual instruments more efficiently, and so on and so forth. So when I say I have the Apollo 8 quad, I have the quad processor in the unit itself, and then the Apollo Twin that I have them daisy chained together, and that I believe has a duo core chip. So I have 6 cores that I can of DSP that can host the UAD plugins. Now, that being said, you have to have a UAD interface in order to run UAD plugins. And that's because it's proprietary. Their plugins are proprietary to the hardware that they use. Okay, so let's answer a few questions beyond that right off the bat. Do you have to use this with a particular digital audio workstation? No, you can use any digital audio workstation you'd like. The console, as you see here in front of me, is a go-between, or an interface, a graphical interface rather, between the user and the digital audio workstation behind it. So if you've never worked in the world of analog, you don't know really how this replicates analog. So let's walk through it real quick. Okay, excuse me. So here what you'll see is, as I mentioned, I have an Apollo Twin and I have an Apollo 8. So up here at the top, you see I have my Apollo Twin, and then over here is the Apollo 8. And all of these, I mean, it looks like a DAW almost in itself, right? And that's because DAWs try to mimic the look of analog consoles as well, okay? So these are essentially channels. That's not essentially, that's exactly what they are. So on the Apollo Twin here, you'll see this level bouncing. This is my audio that's coming from a shotgun mic that I'm running, and that's where the voiceover is coming in, okay? And so on this channel here, I'll get into what this Unison preamp is here in just a second, but you can see that I have a 48 volts because the shotgun is requires phantom power. I can click a pad. I have a high pass filter and then a polarity reverse or polarity flip. And then you have insert slots, and I'm running an LA2A in limiter mode, and then I have a Pro Q legacy plugin. Let me just open these and show you. Their interfaces are beautiful, and they look just like the actual outboard gear. And if you ask anybody in the industry, and I would have to agree, these are the closest representations to the original sounding outboard gear, the original hardware, and that's why people love it so much. Now, buying the interfaces is expensive in its own right, and then the plugins themselves are not cheap either, believe me. So they have hundreds upon hundreds of plugins. I do not own all of them. You get some that they give you when you buy your interface, and then they'll usually offer you some sort of deal quote unquote, and it's not a deal. It's like three plugins for $500. I mean, it's a lot. So that's what I'm saying. You really have to commit to this. But let me tell you why it's so useful, not only when it comes to mixing, but also in the recording process during tracking, okay? For those of you out there who have tracked in your own home studios or bedroom studios, or what do you want to call it, project studios, undoubtedly you have dealt with latency issues, okay? And for the person who isn't entirely clear what latency is just the amount of time it takes the audio to go through the microphone into your A to D converter or your interface, into the computer, through your DAW, out your DAW, back out through the A to D conversion, or now it'd be digital to audio conversion, to the speakers or headphones. That round trip time, okay, it's usually milliseconds, but the more processing power that your CPU is eating up, the longer that trip is going to take for the audio. So that presents a ton of problems when you're setting up to record somebody. And, typically, let's say you're doing vocals. It's typically singers like to hear a little reverb. They like maybe a little delay. They maybe want a little compression, just so that it sounds in their cans, like they're in their headphones, like, a polished sound that helps them. It gives them the confidence to sing the part as it should be. I know from my own experience tracking, if you're tracking just raw vocals and you have no processing on it whatsoever, it can really deflate your ego and your self-confidence and your ability to perform. So that's why you want to have the ability to put reverb and delay and certain things, whatever it is that they want, on the mix that they're hearing in their headphones. Well, if you start to do that in a digital audio workstation, those plugins are going to eat up CPU load, and so there will be an increased delay time. So then what you're going to have happen is the singer, they're going to be singing into the vocal or into the mic, and their vocal that they're hearing is going to be delayed. Even if it's by like 20, 30 milliseconds, maybe it's not that, doesn't sound like that much of a big deal. It is, and it is impossible for them to give a good performance when they're not even sure if they're on the right time. It's a headache, and I'm sure it's one that everybody has dealt with in their own home studios. So this is where UAD saw a beautiful need, and they built a solution for it. And that's what we're looking at here. This is the console. So this, as I mentioned, is your digital audio workstation, okay? So first, I said I was going to explain what this Unison thing is here. So right here, this is one of the preamps that they give you when you buy their one of their interfaces. I also have the API legacy channel strip, but I'm not running that right now. And what this does is if you load this into, if you see this slot Unison right here, they have, I don't know how it works. I was not part of the design team, obviously, but let me just show you in their words what Unison is. Unison technology is Apollo's unique mic and instrument preamp modeling technology that combines physical hardware and DSP, digital signal processing, to provide the most accurate emulations of classic tube and transformer preamps, amplifiers, and stomp boxes. So what that means is when you load like a preamp into the Unison slot, it is somehow, now again, I don't know exactly how it works, but it is somehow changing the impedance of the input to the preamp, the actual physical input. It is changing the something about it. I'm not exactly sure how it works. It's kind of a well-kept secret of theirs, you know, exactly how it works. But by design, then with their plugin and their DSP and all of their emulation processing that they've gone through, they're able to emulate a specific sound that a preamp would give. In this case, this is the 610B, UA 610B, which is a tube. It's an old tube style preamp. Okay. Now, you would usually want to use this to color the sound in some way. I am doing a voiceover for a video. I don't typically need to color the sound for that. I'm just using it in this instance to show you exactly kind of how it works. Okay. As I mentioned here, I have the 48 volts on because it requires phantom power, and I'm putting a high pass filter on it. Now, I should mention too that on the interface itself, there are dedicated buttons to be able to do this. For example, you'll see I can take off the high pass filter and put it back on, all with the touch of a button. Pad, same thing. Phantom power, same thing. It's really wonderful. And then of course the input gain, you can see this orange knob. When it's orange, that means that we're using Unison technology. If I were to take that off, it would be green, but I can obviously, my voice will go away here. I can bring it up with the rotary style kind of volume knob thing that they have built in. And I'm able to control both units, the Apollo Twin and the Apollo 8, with just the Apollo Twin, which is awesome because it's the desktop unit and it's right in front of me here. So that's great. So let's go back to the recording scenario that I mentioned. So let's say we have a singer and they're over there and I'm trying to get them in a comfortable position to be able to track. Well, you see these insert slots here, okay? Well, we can put that on, let's assume then that this channel that I'm speaking through is their vocal mic channel, okay? So I can give them a little compression with the LA2, and I can give them a little EQ if that's what they want as well, and that's all great, okay? And let's say they want some reverb. Well, it's kind of like a digital audio workstation, right? See these aux sends? Well, over here on the right side, you can see aux 1, aux 2. I have installed or instantiated on them a Lexicon digital reverb. So let me unmute the send, and all of a sudden, ooh, you're gonna hear my digital reverb. There is no latency, I should tell you, in my headphones whatsoever. None. So I am not hearing any sort of delay. There is zero latency, which you cannot say the same for if you were trying to do this in Pro Tools or Logic or something else. So wonderful. Sounds kind of interesting, actually, doesn't it? So then aux 2, I think I have, yes, I have a delay. So here is a kind of like a delay. So here's both. And if I wanted this singing, I would turn this off, give you guys a headache. Then I would be able, by way of controlling how much I'm sending, right, to the aux return, that's what they would hear. Zero latency. Now, Michael, that sounds cool and all, but what if I didn't want those effects recorded into or printed into what's being recorded into Pro Tools or into Logic or into Studio One? What then? Well, that's another beautiful choice that they give you by design. Over here on the right, where these meters are dancing, underneath you'll see insert effects, and you can see there's this UAD record and UAD monitor. okay? And if you've never looked at a signal path, don't worry about it. You don't need to know. But the way that this reflects analog is where, like, if you've seen pictures of, say, analog consoles in studios, you also notice that there's patch bays with all these little they're called tiny telephone connectors, and they're patching stuff in. And this is great because depending on where you could patch it into the monitor path or the record path. And all that really means is the, let's say, the reverb in this instance, is the reverb going to be heard? So let's think about it in terms of analog, okay? It's coming into an analog desk. It's being bussed out to a track on a tape machine, okay? And then it's also being sent to a headphone amp, okay? And then that headphone amp is going out to the singer, okay? That's why there's no latency in analog, by the way, because you don't have to wait for it to like play back off the tape. That's not how it works. So, but if you wanted to print, say, the reverb to the tape, you would patch the outboard reverb unit into the signal path before it reached the tape machine, okay? And obviously before it was bussed to the headphone amp. So in that instance, what the singer in the booth is hearing, the reverb, is also being printed to the tape, okay? Now, it's a matter of choice, but most mix engineers, recording engineers, they want the option after the fact to make their decisions in terms of compression, delay, reverb, how much, all that kind of stuff. So it's beautiful. You can actually put the in this case, the wet effects into the monitor path. And what the monitor path would be in that scenario I was just saying is, as the signal is being bussed to the tape machine, it's actually post the tape machine return that you're patching the effect unit into. So it's not actually printed to the tape. It's through a different bus, if that makes any sense, or a different signal path. So they give you that option here. So, for example, you're recording, you don't want this printed to tape, but your singer still wants to hear effects. So you would click UAD monitor like this. We would, unmute this. Let's just use this for now. We would still get our reverb, but when you went to record it into your DAW, it would sound dry like this. And then you can apply your, whatever effects you want. A reverb, be it, most likely. You usually put reverb on vocal, things like that. So that is the genius behind the console construct of the UAD. That and the fact that their units have the digital signal processing, the chipsets in them to take the load off of your computer. Now, UAD plugins can also be used in your digital audio workstation. So say you liked the sound of this Lexicon 224, right? You can insert this into a Pro Tools session or Logic session after the fact when you're mixing. And you can use it as an effect send return type thing, as you normally would. But because, again, it's being hosted by the DSP on the units themselves, it takes up no CPU load for you. So let me show you one more thing that they give you here. And this is your meter and control panel. And this is going to show you how much DSP you're eating up. So you can run UAD plugins until you have maxed this DSP out. Okay, and then as soon as you start maxing this DSP out, the session will start to pop up errors at you and say, hey, you're running out of DSP. So sometimes I'll have videos, lessons online, for example, and I have the UAD LA2A. But I'll be using the Waves version of the LA2A. And people will say, why are you using the Waves LA2A or the CLA2A, the Chris Lord Algae one, and not the UAD one? Don't you have UAD stuff? Yes, I do. But I've maxed out my DSP. and I still want an LA2A style or sounding compressor. And so that's when I'll switch over to something like Waves. Now, of course, latency doesn't matter so much in the mixing world, right? Because you want, once everything is recorded, you want to set your buffer size inside of your DAW to the largest buffer size there is, so that you don't get any sort of overload errors and you're not having to constantly restart your session or anything, right? So it's beautiful for recording, and it's also great for mixing because you can use as many UAD plugins as you want without having to overload your computer, and which allows you to use more virtual instruments. As most of us know, virtual instruments eat up most of your RAM and your CPU load inside of your digital audio workstation. So if your reverb and delays and maybe some of your compression and stuff, if you can take the CPU load tax off of your computer and use UAD stuff, it'll free up more headroom on your computer to use more virtual instruments, and again, not get those overload errors. So that is the whole story behind UAD. That's how UAD kind of works. And it's really, as I said, it's a decision that you have to make. You have to have the money for it. You have to want to invest in it. They don't sponsor me. I spent my own hard-earned money on this stuff. But in my experience, it's hands down the best recording, mixing, all-in-one setup for the money. I'm not saying there's not other great converters out there and interfaces. There's more price friendly ones. Mid-level companies like PreSonus are starting to put out really high resolution interfaces. Antelope has some really high, I mean, that's more high-end gear like UAD stuff. Antelope has some great stuff. Look through, but what makes UAD, I mean, look through the Sweetwater catalog, for example. You'll see tons and tons of really high-end gear that's really great. But what makes UAD different is what you're looking at here, and that's this console graphical user interface, and the fact that they've installed DSP into their units to offload your computer and free up more headroom and buffer size and all that good stuff for you. So that is the buzz around UAD. Think about it. People ask me all the time, should I go UAD? Should I go UAD? I've seriously had this conversation with so many people online like yourselves, through email or whatever, and I have converted more people to switch to UAD than I can probably count. I should probably end up working for Universal Audio as a sales rep or something at some point, because I can really pitch all the high points. But again, they don't pay me to say this. It's just, it is what it is, and they do a fantastic job over there. So thank you so much for checking out the video. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so now and click that bell icon. A lot of content coming at you. We are back. We have hit the ground running. We have tons of content coming. We are loading up our Patreon. We're going to have templates, giveaways, lessons where you can download the audio files to follow along, and we are going full out for everybody here. So it's a good time to get on the train before it leaves the station, so to speak. So patreon.com/proaudiolessons. Check it out, join, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.